There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that Kathleen Kennedy made the 100% wrong choice in hiring Rian Johnson to write and direct The Last Jedi. And by his own admission, he basically kind of admits it as well. And we're going to talk about that right now.
You're writing, let's say you're creating your own universe. You said you don't think about actors. You're starting kind of something from scratch. How is that approach versus something where you have a pre-existing universe? Like if you're writing characters for Star Wars, you have this universe. You have characters that everybody knows, and then now you are doing something from scratch. Like, do you find your approach is different for that?
No, not at all. Because I don't know. I don't really think in terms of universes, or in terms of creating worlds or whatever. That's not that interesting to me. The only thing that's interested in me is story. The story specific to, like, whether you're writing a Star Wars film or that's part of a 3-movie trilogy or quote-unquote original thing like Knives Out, you're still telling a story that's new to the thing that you're doing, that it has to work within the context of that movie. To me, the notion of what's the entire galaxy or world that you're creating or something, I can't imagine getting excited about creating that. To me, what I'm excited about is creating a 2-hour-long experience for an audience to have in the theater. And that means how they engage moment to moment with the story and the characters that are on the screen. And that doesn't change in either one of those.
Hey everyone, Matt Jarbo here with $3 Theater. Do me a solid and smack that like button, beat the crap out of it, because you're mad about how bad The Last Jedi was. So anyway, in that clip I just played for you guys, what we saw there was Rian Johnson talking about the writing process for Knives Out and also Star Wars. And he admits that he did not write Star Wars, The Last Jedi, Episode 8, the middle film in the sequel trilogy, the 8th film of a 9-film saga, with any kind of respect for what came before it or what would come after it. He created his own little bubble, his own little echo chamber inside of Star Wars at a pivotal moment in the sequel trilogy that would be setting up the ending while also taking the cues from J.J. Abrams on the movie before it and keeping the storyline flowing. And he didn't care about literally any of that, because it didn't fit the way that he writes his stories. He doesn't care about the universe. He just wants to tell the story that is most interesting to the movie that he's writing. What the hell does that even mean? Look, in regards to, let's say, Knives Out, it does make a fair amount of sense. It's a very self-contained story taking place predominantly at one location with an ensemble cast of talking heads. It is a great movie and I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite from last year, and I do look forward to Knives Out too. You look at something like, let's say, Brick, very similar. A 1920s dialogue, at least, noir detective film set in a high school about a bunch of kids who are dealing drugs, a death of one student, and another student's attempt to try to stop, figure out what happened. It's very, very self-contained. It's very self-referential, and it makes sense in the context of what he's trying to do. Now look at Looper. Looper is a story about time travel where mobsters send back hits 30 years in the past in order to have their younger selves kill these older people and dispose of the body without there ever being any witnesses to the crime. And yet for some reason there's telekinesis and Bruce Willis is killing kids. And I mean, look, the movie is a mess. It's an absolute mess of a film. I don't know how anyone can defend Looper. It's not good, but it's also not following Rian Johnson's own rules for writing a universe. He was writing a film. He was attempting to establish a universe in Looper and it failed. He was attempting to do world building and it failed. With Brick and with Knives Out, the world building was just in that confined location, either a high school in the suburbs where a bunch of kids spoke 1920s gangster dialogue, or a mansion of a mystery author who's dead and trying to find out who did it, kind of Clue style. Those are two very self-contained entities, and that's why those movies work better. Star Wars is part of an ongoing saga. saga. It's part of an ongoing story. It's finishing up 40 years of storytelling. By the time we saw The Last Jedi, it was 40 and a half years old, and he had no regard for literally any of it. I mean, look, every time this guy talks about The Last Jedi, I get more furious at him because it shows you precisely how bad it was. It shows you precisely how much he effed it up. It shows you how precisely that. And even though the movie is directed well, and it would be fine probably if it didn't have the name Star Wars attached to it, it as part of a narrative, as part of a 3-act structure, as part of the middle part of a larger story of continuing these characters and their motivations, he started closing loops, closing storylines. He started killing off characters that were meant to stay around longer. And even after one of the key characters, the actor Carrie Fisher, passed away a full year before the release of The Last Jedi, he still fought to have Luke Skywalker die. And no one stopped him. No one put their foot down, and it would have been one of like 3 people: Kathleen Kennedy, Alan Horn, or Bob Iger. Those are the 3 people that were definitely above Rian Johnson, and not one of them stepped in and said, I think this is a bad idea. Or, hey, maybe pulling from the line from Star Wars that we always hear to say, I have a bad feeling about this. You know, like we always hear that line. We always kind of laugh at that. No one looked at that and went like, this is gonna end poorly. This is gonna end badly. There's not going to be any blowback from this, right? I mean, clearly people are going to be okay with Luke Skywalker dying. I mean, it's Mark Hamill's alive and Harrison Ford's not going to come back and Carrie Fisher's dead, but no one's going to care. No, I mean, like, come on, no one cares. It's Luke Skywalker. Like, no one's going to care, right? Like, come on, guys. Oh my God. Like, oh my God. I can't with Rian Johnson. I just can't. I've tried so hard to bring myself to talk positively about The Last Jedi because there are elements of the movie that I do very much enjoy. It's like there are some good nuggets in an otherwise just chode of a movie. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you figure like this, if it's a cow pie, that cow ate some nuts. Some of those nuts were unprocessed through the body and it came out on the other side. And those are the things you could munch on. It's a terrible analogy, I fully admit, but still frustrating to think about because it's just, he didn't care. He played by his own rules when he was in somebody else's sandbox and no one called him on it. No one stopped him. No one said, Rian, this is a bad idea. You shouldn't do this. And people are going to argue. There's some people arguing in the chat, right? Oh, it's because him and Kathleen Kennedy, they share similar political views. Come on. But you can't summarize that with the ending of the movie. All right. You can't sit there and say, well, the part of the He-Man woman haters club, right? There's the man haters club, whatever it is, whatever the Me Too movement people are going to try to say is, it's like, oh, but Rose Tico. No, it's like, you can't, we're not talking about Rose Tico. Bad character, bad situation, relegated to nothing in the Rise of Skywalker, obviously. 1 minute, 26 seconds, I think, is screen time in that movie. But anyway, look, but we're talking about the ending of the film, and we're talking about the narrative structure of that movie. None of that had to do with any kind of woke ideology or identity politics or anything like that. It's just bad storytelling because it wasn't taking into account what came before it, and it wasn't taking into account what could potentially come after it. And the fact that the outline for number 3 wasn't written before they went to number 2 just goes, I mean, it's like, oh my God, a showrunner will outline multiple scripts if they're doing a show or doing a season. They don't just do one episode at a time. They write out the whole season and they plan out the whole season, and then they go and they get the different directors and they go and they make it work. And yet for some reason, Kathleen Kennedy, who does take responsibility for this 100%, didn't do that. And when one of your main stars dies, unfortunately, prematurely, at the young age of 66, I think is what Carrie Fisher was when she passed away. You make the changes that need to be made in order to keep the integrity of the story going. Do you really think that Carrie Fisher would be on board with them recycling old footage of her? I mean, probably, maybe to an extent, but at the same time, knowing Carrie, at least to the best of the ability of which I can say that I would know her from interviews and everything else, she would have been like, no, kill me off and let him live, man. That's better for the story, because she was a writer and she understood that. She understood the universe. She had been in it from the beginning for 1 and 2. Lucas went to her for help with the prequels. I mean, we can argue what she said that stuck. We don't know. But she still helped with the story a little bit, with some of the dialogue. We know that much. She at least had a fundamental understanding of what made Star Wars, having been there from the beginning and still good friends with George up until the day she died. She would not have wanted it to go the way that it did. I guarantee that. And apparently everyone at Lucasfilm they dropped the ball so heavily on that one. And then there was almost no way that The Rise of Skywalker was ever going to be able to fully recover from that fumble. There just wasn't. Not unless they made it 2 movies or they made it 3.5 hours long and they broke everything down. So I give JJ credit for picking up the ball and running with it and attempting to get it over the goal line, which he did. He eked out a safety, right? He eked out a safety. A win is a win at the end of the day. But Johnson still so fundamentally broke that franchise that when he talks about this kind of stuff from back in the day, or when he talks about this in an interview, it's so bad that you just can't help but want to pull your hair. You pull your hair out. It's that bad. That's how bad it is. Anyway, just wanted to put that one out there. I want to hear you guys' thoughts. I want to hear your opinions. Let me know down in the comments below. I will talk to you guys all later. Have yourself a great day. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And peace out.